Hello, everybody. Welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
It's not going to be Fantasy Premier League today, although we probably will be playing Fantasy World Cup as and when that kicks around. We'll get through our People's Poll options in a second.
I was going to say, let's talk a bit of Fantasy Premier League first, Suj.
Yeah, let's do it. We're going to talk about that, but the main the main pod today is People's Poll. And we'll talk about runners and riders in a second. There was a game last night. Leicester comfortably winning at home 4-0 against Nottingham Forest, who now prop up the entire table. 4 points for the entire season.
Well, that's what Leicester are on now. Congratulations to all the Foxes.
Do you think Nottingham Forest will score more goals this season than players signed?
Yes, although subject to how many they buy in January, yes. I don't think scoring goals is going to be a massive issue for Forest. I think what we've learned across last night, because most people won't have watched the games that they had against Bournemouth and Forest, where they conceded 3 goals in the second half of both of those games, and obviously conceded 3 goals in the first half last night. What people will have seen last night is that there is definite defensive weaknesses. And obviously last night, as discussed when Mark Southern's come on the fan view with me last Thursday, a change of system wasn't quite what we thought when we saw the team. And we did say when we see the team, it's possible we might not know how they're going to play. So I saw the team and thought, right, that's 3-5-2. You're going Qatar at centre-back. You're going to drop Gibbs-White in a little bit deeper, and they're going to drop Lingard in deeper, and it's going to be a 3 in midfield. That's not what they did. They played 4 at the back. Chiarte and O'Brien played in midfield. They got dragged off at half-time. Nico Williams was on a booking, was dragged off at half-time. Remind me to speak about him briefly. They went to a back 4. Lingard and Johnson played wide. And actually, in the end, the 4-0 scoreline is ridiculously harsh. All 3 of Leicester's goals in the first half were from outside the box, from a combined XG of about 0.3. The first one's obviously deflected. And at 0-0... Gibbs-White sends Awoniyi away and he hits the post and he should score. And maybe it's a very different game from there. Leicester did look fresh, I would say.
Better.
Yeah, and it's worth saying that they were a lot better against Tottenham, just got annihilated in the last 20 minutes. If you were on Twitter last night and you don't own James Maddison, it will feel to you like everybody in the world owns James Maddison. But actually, no, it was just a very good differential for many, many people last night. He's certainly the one to own. I think he's got this ridiculous record. I saw someone tweet, forgive me, of he's averaging certainly double figures for points in his last 8 games against promoted teams or something.
Oh, weird.
And he's got Bournemouth at the weekend away
Nice.
as well. So every reason to expect more. He's absolutely flying. He's interviewed, by the way, after the game, Serge.
He's been pretty good in a few, even
So
after
good.
against you guys.
Yeah,
as
he
well.
spoke so well. I spoke about that as well. He
Yeah.
did speak so well last night as well. Give brilliant little insights. We were having a discussion on...
Who you want is honesty. You want someone to not give you the boilerplate answers,
Yeah.
like, we'll just take it one game at a time
But
and we
he-
just put the effort in the training.
His analysis is better than most analysers listen to, because I tweeted and said there's a manager or a coach in there listening to the way he speaks
Maybe
in
a
the
pundit.
future. And a lot of people came back and said that. It's like, get him on the TV now, I'd be a pundit. So, yeah, I'd happily sit him on Monday Night Football one Monday night with Jamie Carragher. He's such an insightful bloke, really easy to listen to, comes across as like he doesn't follow that line of, I'm worried about what I'm going to say. He's very honest. He spoke about his hopes of playing for England. He's not going to get in the England squad, as much as people want to push for it, as we discussed last week when we spoke about the England squad. I don't think, no matter what he does in the next couple of weeks, that he'll get in that squad. I think if it was qualifiers in November, maybe he'd get back in. But for the tournament at this stage,
Yeah, I
I just can't see it. Nico Williams, just briefly, -1 last night in FPL. Also in Sky, there's a few... actually, let's not bring up Sky now, so we'll talk about it
tomorrow. I didn't buy Madison.
We'll talk
I
about
saved
it.
a transfer.
We'll talk about it tomorrow. Cooper did say that he was taken off primarily because he was on a booking and they obviously couldn't afford to go down to 10 men. So Serge Aurier obviously came on. Interesting. You want to tighten things up, bring Serge Aurier on. is one way of looking at it. But
just as likely to get sent off. Serge Aurier in a half of football with no yellow card is as likely to get sent off as Nico Williams on a yellow, possibly.
I think what I would say is for those who are intending to play Nico Williams at home to Aston Villa next week, which is still a good fixture because Villa aren't exactly firing themselves at the moment, it's okay. I don't think Cooper's going to be in charge though, mate. Lots of noises this morning about Rafa Benitez, the Rangers manager Giovanni Van Bronckhorst being mentioned as well. Sean Dyche, his name was being touted by a lot of people last night, less so this morning. I think the fact that they lost those 2 home games to Fulham and Bournemouth, got battered last night, somewhat harshly in terms of final score, though Leicester were definitely deserved winners, means that there'll probably be a change, I think, unfortunately, which is a shame because I don't think most Forest fans wouldn't want that change. And you got to remember, he took them over. They were on like 1 point from 7 in the Championship. Took them up to the extent that it was only their deficit that meant they didn't really get promoted automatically. But they look the team to target at the moment from an FPL perspective. There'll be people listening to this now thinking, I want to get Watkins or Coutinho next week just to target Forest. I think it'd be a different manager in charge. And I wouldn't be surprised if they beat Villa next week, by the way, even if Cooper's still in charge. I mean, it'd be a shame if he gets sacked, but I think that's probably going to happen.
Difficult times at Nottingham Forest. Tell us the runners and riders for the People's Poll.
I shall. So there were 3 choices. One was Life After Football, which actually Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher had a really interesting discussion last night about psychology of football. Was talking very much in terms of how Harry Maguire's been suffering recently in terms of the media and stuff. It was a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, I think we'll revisit that because it's something that is... Well, anything on the financial side is close to my heart. I think that's one that I'm really interested in.
Well, that obviously, that they was talking last night, it's kind of within football now, but I think would have been a nice spin-off as well, talking about the psychology. It's really difficult. If a player's played badly, we have to sit here and criticise, I think, in the same way that we would if a player plays well. Yeah. The consequences in the mass media of criticising the performance of someone like Harry Maguire and the impact of what that is, maybe not on the player so much, but like on the family of the player who probably do see it. I don't know. I don't know how you get away from it. If a player needs to be criticised, I think in the media you have a duty to report that, don't you?
Yeah,
say what you say.
Sure. It's funny on salaries as well with players going bankrupt life after football and that kind of thing. I remember having a conversation with a mate of mine who works at one of the big top 4 accounting firms or whatever in the city. And he does well. You're talking 6-figure salaries. And when I said to him, you probably earn more than a League 2 footballer, he was like, no way could it possibly be. And when you actually did a look up on the salaries that you earn in that level, and you're like, oh, these are just, they're not bad salaries, but no one's getting rich off that. And then you think, what are they going to do after football when they've dedicated so much life?
The statistic you said about the amount of players?
3 years. 40% of professional footballers are bankrupt 3 years after they finish playing.
That's staggering, isn't it?
Mad.
Because we just sit here and assume that they're made for life.
Not at all.
Okay. Yes, I think we'll revisit that. And I'm pretty sure we'll revisit the narrow loser in the vote as well, which domestic cup competitions. So the Champions League format changes from the 24-25 season, which means there's going to be 8 group games. And there's also going to be an additional playoff knockout round, which is going to be scheduled, we think, in January. So there won't be much between Champions League group stage, where now it kind of normally finishes. Obviously, this is an odd year with the World Cup. Yeah. Normally, first or second week of December, nothing then till kind of mid-February. That's going to change, where it's going to basically probably just be like a month break. And it's 3rd and 4th round FA Cup replays are probably going to have to go, I think. And there is some discussion beginning to happen now about teams who qualify for Europe not participating in the League Cup or fielding an under-21 team.
Okay.
There's going to be a big discussion, but I actually think this is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to get forced into happening where the big clubs, or rather those who qualify for Europe, just from a schedule perspective, I think it's going to be too much.
Okay.
The winner of the poll was, what will it be like for travelling fans at the World Cup in Qatar? We will, between now and the tournament starting, revisit things like human rights. If we ever look that on this podcast, it's not that we're ignoring the subject, we will talk about it. But on this particular podcast, we are going to focus on what it will be like for fans going to a World Cup in a small country, Suj.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like a city. Right? It's very small. I think we sometimes lose sight of the fact that if we had a World Cup here, fans and teams are spread over like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different cities and have their training camps in all sorts of different places. Everyone is going to be in a much closer proximity than ever before with this World Cup.
The population of Qatar is not even 3 million people, Suj. For context, population of London is 9 million.
Yep.
So, I'd have to think about it. Could London host a World Cup? Just think about that for a second. Could London host a World Cup?
I don't think so.
Why not?
We've kind of sort of got enough stadiums, but I think the use of the pitches, I don't know if like you'd be using the pitches every day or every 2 days or something.
That's interesting you bring that up because these pitches at the World Cup are going to get used every 2 days. In the group stage. You've got 4 games a day. So the first, other than the day 1 and actually day 2, but from day 3 to 8, there are games UK time, 10 a.m., 1 p.m., 4 p.m., 7 p.m. And there are 8 stadiums at the tournament. So you literally got 4 stadiums on Tuesday, 4 stadiums on Wednesday, and then again knock on. So yeah, that could be a problem.
Yeah, I think that's why London couldn't. Like geographically, yes. I mean, it's one of the best.
London
suited
couldn't, but these lot are going to do it.
Yeah, I know.
We've got White Hart Lane, the Emirates, London Stadium, Stamford Bridge, Wembley, 5 stadiums.
Yeah.
If you worked on increasing the likes of Selhurst Park, probably would need a rebuild. I think yes.
You could use Brentford Stadium's pretty new.
It's only 17,000.
Yeah, but for some of the group games that are less,
it's minimum.
popular.
I think for Euros, it's minimum 30,000 capacity. I think, and I think for World Cups, I think it normally has to be 40. I think.
Wow. Okay.
So in theory, no, London couldn't, but yet this place. The whole country, never mind the fact that most of it is actually in Doha's the capital, isn't it, Suj? Is a third of the size of London is going to host a whole
How many
World
stadiums
Cup
are we talking
tournament.
about here?
It's 8. It's 8 stadiums as far as I'm aware.
All built new.
Not completely, but majority, yes.
Yeah.
Some are going to be converted where they're going to take like the top tiers off and stuff like that afterwards. Because otherwise, what are you going to do with these 8 stadiums in Qatar, with respect?
Yep.
Which has been a legacy problem for other Olympic cities and World Cup host venues for tournaments afterwards and such. I think Brazil has had certain problems with that. South Africa has as well. 32 nations go into a country that has a population of 3 million and obviously has certain rules and legislations that just don't work with the football norm, shall we say.
Yep.
We're going to take you through kind of a little bit of a guide that the Football Supporters Association have published, which just throw up various discussion points for what's going to be difficult for fans travelling. Do you know how many people they're estimating are going from England?
From England?
Yes.
I'd say probably 60,000.
To Qatar? No. The FSA are estimating probably 2,000 to 3,000 from England.
Oh, wow.
And a similar number from Wales.
Wow, that's nothing.
Yeah. I think they were saying that the largest, other than local, like Saudi Arabia, will obviously have quite a large number out there, for example, because it's on the border. I think they're estimating that Argentina will probably be the most supported team in Qatar.
Which will be, what, 5,000, 7,000?
I have no idea.
Oh, wow. I didn't realise the numbers were as low as that.
So they're estimating probably, let's say, 5,000 across England and Wales travelling to Qatar. If those nations obviously get to the knockout stage, those numbers will increase.
So if the World Cup was in Germany, how do you know off the top of your head, or how many would travel?
In Germany?
Yeah, how many from the UK would travel to Germany?
The next European Championship is in Germany. Tens of thousands.
Wow, okay, so we're talking a big increase if it was somewhere more accessible.
Huge. I mean, certainly if England play in the west of Germany, you can get there by train.
Yeah.
So East Germany, you've got to fly, but the likes of, say, the Dortmund stadiums, Frankfurt and stuff, the majority of the German stadiums are probably going to be on the west. So Germany's so easily accessible from the UK.
Okay. So the numbers aren't going to be as big as I would have maybe thought.
And I think the number is probably only as high as that in, say, Wales's case. Obviously, because they haven't been to World Cup 1958. They're obviously desperate to go and support their country, which is completely understandable. Whereas, I mean, from an English perspective, looking at it, I don't know why you would go.
It feels to me like when we've been doing a bit of research and digging around for this pod, the compromise of taking a World Cup to somewhere like Qatar is that you're taking it away from the rest of the world. It feels like it's no longer like the World Cup where everyone can get together and have a party. I get that you want to take football to a place that it's not had, and you want to take the World Cup somewhere new and open it up to new markets and whatever else the benefits are. But then, is it worth it at the cost of taking it away from everybody else?
Listen, let's not bullshit the listeners or the viewers. The World Cup is in Qatar because of money. Reality. If FIFA want to call me up and discuss that, I'm happy to have a conversation. It should be said the British teams will still be quite well supported out in Qatar, because I reckon a large number of expats and stuff from local surrounding countries
UAE
in the Middle
and
East
stuff like that
will travel over. It's it's interesting. The main airport in Doha, it's believed, is basically used as like a transport hub. There's not that many people actually go there. You've got this influx of 31 countries obviously going to be visiting in. Some Saudi Arabia's across the border and stuff. But it's believed a lot of people are probably going to fly to Dubai and then on to Qatar. It's probably a cheaper way of doing it. Let's talk about some of the things of what it may be like in Qatar. So accommodation, not cheap, as you can probably guess. It's believed some hotels are going to be in and around the region, if you'd sort of 4 or 5-star hotels, around about £400 a night.
Yep.
A lot of people are looking at sort of tent areas. I think a lot of people are looking at staying sort of east of Saudi Arabia and then driving. You cannot drive through Saudi Arabia into Qatar. But there will be buses from Saudi Arabia to Doha. But you cannot drive your car over the border from Saudi Arabia to Qatar. So you can leave the car in Saudi Arabia, then get a bus into Qatar. Sounds like fun, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think the price being one thing with the accommodation, it's the availability is the problem.
Well, of course.
There's not that much. You're not going to build hotels for the World Cup in the same way that you will maybe stadiums, because what you're going to do to fill them afterwards. From my understanding, obviously there's a big oil and gas industry in Qatar, and a lot of the hotels are used by expat workers who are out there for projects and what have you. And the rest of the hotel rooms, a large majority are earmarked for FIFA. From what I've seen, 80% of hotel rooms are given over to FIFA at the moment, and 20% they've kind of held back for regular customers that are there just to dig some oil out of the ground. Although FIFA will be re-releasing rooms that they haven't sold or used up for their allocation, but it just means availability is a problem, right? Like, it doesn't matter what it costs. If there's no rooms, there's no rooms. Yeah.
I think it's an in and out job for the most people. It's going to be, a lot of people is going to be tent jobs and stuff. There are going to be like accommodations in terms of apartments and stuff. It won't be as expensive, but getting hold of it's not going to be easy. Perhaps once you get into the knockout stage, people might find it a little bit easier with half the teams obviously going home, for example.
Exactly.
Alcohol. Whether you're a drinker or you're not a drinker, particularly, I guess, from a English fan viewpoint, we're used to these scenes of English people drinking at tournaments, right?
Thank God there's only 2,000 or 3,000 of them.
I feel like Qatar might end English football's relationship with alcohol. The advice is don't take alcohol to Qatar. Definitely don't drink it in the streets. You may be sent home or arrested, essentially.
Unless you can't take it into the country. You can't buy duty free and take it into the country.
Simple. The only place that it's going to be on sale is these kind of 4 or 5-star hotels, which aren't going to be that easy to get. It's not like just going to a pub in London. You're going to go into this 4 or 5-star hotel. Presumably, you would normally need to stay there. These do have food offerings.
They've got security guards out the front.
As well.
Are you here to if you go to certain hotels, they'll charge you a fee to get in. In Dubai, I know that's the case. A certain you can't just walk in. I'm here to have a look around. No, thank you, sir. Please leave. So it's not going to be easy to get into these 4 and 5-star hotels.
And you know the price of a pint in these 4 to 5-star hotels?
15 quid, give or take. 12, 15 quid.
Going to be 12 to 15 quid. There are negotiations happening at the moment for happy hours between 5 and 7 p.m. where it may be half the price, for example. There are going to be 2 specific fan zones. There'll be no alcohol on sale in stadiums. For those who are intending to go out there, nothing on concourses or anything like that. I think there will be 0% beer potentially. There is one of the funniest things I read, Suj, is there is one off license in Doha, one off license, and the only way you can buy booze from there is if you have like a permit. or a license, essentially.
Yeah.
So there's not going to be a lot of drinking. There's, I think it's Arcadia is the name of the company who do the festival for Glastonbury. They're organising a festival in Qatar, which is going to be going on from like 10 a.m. to 5 a.m.
The fan park thing.
You will be able to get booze at these things, but it's believed that the only beer that's going to be on sale is Budweiser, which is presumably going to be the official beer of the World Cup. Also, if you're thinking of getting a beer in one of these hotels, don't expect to be watching the games. So the majority of hotels are not going to be showing the games. This is because beIN Sports, who own the right in that region for the World Cup, want to make most of the money back that they're outlaying for their rights to screen the tournament in that region. They are asking hotels for absurd amounts of money to show the games, and most of them are saying
no thanks.
We can't justify that. That goes as far as hotel rooms will not have access to games. So if you have got a hotel booked in Qatar, I suggest NordVPN or something like that. They've not even sponsored us, but there you go. There's a free plug.
Yes.
Take your HDMI cable and whatever you need to get the dodgy reception out there. Don't get caught though. I don't know if that's an arrestable offence or not.
Probably is.
So far you can't drink. It's too expensive if you can find somewhere to drink, and you can't even watch the games out there. And there's probably nowhere to actually sleep either. It's good so far. COVID rules. You need proof of vaccination is not enough. You will need a PCR test within 48 hours of trying to enter the country.
Yep.
The FSA described their tour as a recce, they called it, actually. Not that you're doing a recce in Qatar as per se, but they actually, one of their travelling party actually had a PCR test that was 51 hours old and was refused entry into the country. So
these tests are like £100, depending on where you get them.
They will be looked at. You need it's the Etaraz app. It's compulsory in Qatar. I don't know if that's like their version of our NHS app, for example. Dress. So it's recommended generally that you're not wearing short sleeves or anything like that. In general, you can wear what you want, but be respectful. But I don't know if you want to be walking around the streets in a short sleeve shirt. I was listening to one of the FSA members who was on the Guardian Football Weekly and was saying one of the things you could get done for is even in a stadium, if you take your shirt off, is just completely frowned upon. It's like, how are you going to deal with it? And obviously we'll see it every summer tournament. You'll see people with their shirts off.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
and this is going to be 30-40 degree heat.
It's still going to be hot out there. Yeah, absolutely. In December it'll cool down, but in November when the tournament starts, we can still expect temperatures that could get up to as high as 30 degrees, for example. So yes, it is going to be warm. We're advising people not to wear short sleeve shirts and stuff as well.
Yep.
And a lot of these stadiums apparently have fairly long walks from transport hubs, etc. Don't take your shirt off if you're in a football stadium. Drugs. The FSA.
Don't take your shirt off if you're on a football pitch as well.
Don't go on the pitch either. The FSA have advised on drugs. Literally, I want to read exactly what they say. Do not even think about taking drugs into or possessing drugs in Qatar. If you get offered something in a bar, the person could be an undercover police officer. Possession is not just a slap on the wrist, and even residual or small amounts can result in very lengthy prison sentences. Don't do drugs in Qatar.
Don't do drugs, kids.
Restaurants, no booze either.
There'll be plentiful food. Like, I don't think there'll be an issue with that. But yeah,
there will be chains that you're familiar with, the likes of Pizza Huts, McDonald's, Nando's, etc. All that sort of thing.
Food, I don't think will be a particular problem.
And pricing, apparently, food-wise, is not unreasonable in comparison to what we used to here. Yep. Fan zones.
This park that you're talking about.
So Al Bidder Park Fan Zone has an alcohol license, but only from 6:30 p.m. to 1 a.m. has a 40,000 capacity. Sounds fine. Giant screens, family friendly. Games will be on.
Lovely.
And they'll open early if there are early games on. So like in the first week of the tournament, but there'll be no booze. You can't have alcohol till like 6:30 p.m. at night. Arcadia has DJs and open 10 a.m. to 5 a.m. serving alcohol. That's probably going to be the Budweiser place. It's ticketed. Do you know how much entry is?
I do.
Go on.
Almost as much as a Champions League game at White Hart Lane. £75.
More. 72 quid my ticket against Eintracht Frankfurt next week.
And that's entrance in per day.
£75 for entry, for nothing.
Well, you get to watch the games.
This is staggering, mate. Yeah, Budweiser only probably there as well. Lots, obviously, on most LGBT plus Q supporters are not going to travel. I think
it's not worth it.
The word is that obviously what Qatar/FIFA keeps saying is everyone's welcome, but not actually specifically saying you are welcome. The line is always everyone's welcome, but in terms of whether you're straight or you're gay, any kind of open street sign of affection, etc., is just frowned. Don't do it, essentially. But most, it sounds like, unfortunately, are not feeling comfortable to travel out there, is what the FSA have said, which is, it's understandable from their perspective. I mean, it's understandable actually why anybody wouldn't go at the moment, but it's another reason we just look at this and go, how have they got this this tournament? Stadiums, expect initial ticket checks on perimeters to fan zones. That's fairly normal. No alcohol in stadiums, as I said. Temperatures, as we said, it's probably going to be, by the time the final comes around, could be as low as sort of 16, 17 degrees, can still be as hot as sort of 24, 25. When the tournament starts, it could still be really hot. Like, England are going to play Iran at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, our time. It's, what is it, 3.5 hours difference, I want to say.
3 or 4 hours.
It's not a huge amount of time difference, actually. It will be afternoon. It will be hot still. Queues are advised on border if you are coming across, obviously, from that Saudi Arabia route. Lots of people will be arriving at the airport, and it's not used to the volume of people, essentially. Inside Qatar, there'll be lots of free transport, it's worth saying, to stadiums. To get people from venue to venue. Travel insurance is obviously extremely advised. Fancy going?
Nah. Nothing about it tempts me to want to go.
It's interesting that, and it is worth saying, the next World Cup will be 48 teams in 2026. It's going to be hosted in the USA, Canada, and Mexico. Which is going to be a span distance.
A third of the landmass of the world or something is what it's spread over.
Absolutely incredible size.
That's mad.
I mean, I get it, because Canada and Mexico probably don't have enough to host it by themselves.
Yeah.
So their involvement with USA obviously comfortably could host a World Cup tournament by themselves, and the majority of stadiums will be in the US. They've got huge stadiums for the NFL and whatnots. The attendance records will get absolutely smashed at that tournament out there. Interestingly, Sergio, I read this morning as well, about 2030, we think Spain and Portugal will probably get the tournament. Times have been reporting this morning that Ukraine are going to join that bid.
Oh, wow.
And they want to give Ukraine a set of group games, which is believed as a nice little political ploy, if you will, which is understandable to want to give something back to that country if it can host games in Ukraine, for example. It looks like Ukraine are going to join that bid with Spain, Portugal, which is a feel-good vote, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I think
Spain and Portugal...
It's a long way to go between now and 2030
and Portugal would have been winning that vote anyway, because it's believed that it's Europe's turn again. Europe is normally every 12 years, so 2030, 2042, probably going to hear England's name mentioned again, although we are bidding with the British nations and the Republic. It looks like we'll probably get the Euros in 2028. Interestingly, I read one of the potential competitive bids, and this takes some brain working out, to compete with Spain, Portugal, might be from 3 different continents: Greece, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia.
Oh, wow.
It's interesting, though.
It's funny
how do you get that as a joint bid?
I suppose geography, they maybe all have shared borders, or with the Med in the middle, people can access each of those countries.
It's beginning to feel more and more like the idea of World Cups being in the singular countries is almost going to pass here. They want to get as many different people having it as possible, don't they? Which I understand.
I love the idea of 2030 in Spain, Portugal.
Spain's very capable of hosting it by themselves. Portugal did great for Euro 2004. Probably needs a few more stadiums for a World Cup, I would suggest. Spain definitely could do a World Cup, no problem. I'd rather have it in one country. I'd definitely rather have it in a country that's large enough rather than Qatar. And we will speak a lot more about Qatar and several reasons why it shouldn't be there as we approach the tournament.
Indeed. There was a little rundown for you, listeners, of what to expect. If you are heading over to Qatar or planning to,
do you think anyone's just listened to this and gone, I'm going to look up flight prices?
Nah, I don't think so at all.
By the way, that's not cheap either.
But yeah, there's a kind of little rundown on what we know so far. As we get closer to the tournament, as James said, more will unravel as people start arriving and footage and information gets shared over social media. I'm sure there'll be stories and conversations to be had.
It's going to be very different to any others. It's worth saying, and obviously we look back on it now and you go, how was the World Cup in Russia 4 years ago? But there was huge concerns going into that tournament, and it was successful.
It went off without any problems as well. So back at you tomorrow with Sky Fantasy Football. My woes, James is doing okay, and then the rest of the week, Crash the Correspondence and Diff Show.
Yes, Palace Leeds Thursday. Good one with Mig and Andy.
Lovely jubbly. Stay safe, look after yourselves. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Cue music, please, man child.